Okay, today I'm going to review your first miscellaneous item related to file process. So, by using STM standard, we have talked about what it means to do mathematics, right? So based on the 5 process: problem solving, reasoning and proof, communication, connection, and representation. Based on these 5 processes, we have thought about how to access mathematical thinking processes. So in addition to the 5 process, we investigate in depth, what these 5 processes exactly mean based on STM standard. As you can see, group 1, 2, 5, and 7 worked on connection. Group 4, 8, 9 investigate in representation, and the other 3 group problem solving as well as reasoning and proof. So today I'm going to review connection and representation based on your homework, first homework. So take a look at carefully in order to understand in depth the meaning of each statements. The connections should be made in the mathematics classroom to help students. The first one, recognize and use connection among mathematical ideas. So one of the important things you need to take a look at the connection among mathematical ideas. One example which you addressed by STM standard, algebraic representation, algebraic ideas with geometric idea, right? That is one of the representative. Another thing, to understand how mathematical ideas interconnect and build on one another to produce a coherent whole. One important thing, this is not or, right? This is and. Do you understand what is the meaning of and, right? In English. That means it should produce a coherent whole. Do you remember what problem, what idea I gave you to explain a coherent whole? As an example of a coherent whole, I connected, right, area with volume. You remember that example, right? So according to the STM standard, coherent whole not just only connection between mathematical idea within one topic, but also connection between mathematical ideas across the topic. Make sense? That's why they pointed out this one. And finally, outside of mathematics, as you can see, right? Recognize, apply mathematics in context, outside of mathematics. You do know what each statement, right, means, right, to you. I'm going to give you a chance. For instance, the first group made this one. Take a look at the problem first. 43, 5, 1. Let's hear your opinion step by step, and then I'm going to listen with the one representative from the first group. 김치에 마이크 들고 이야기하세요. Why did you select 1? What is your rationale? Just speak loud to hear other classmates hear your voice clearly. Thank you for your response. Let's see. 남윤모? Why don't you tell us, why did you select 2?
소리가 정확하게 기억 안 나는데 중간에 접근했던 것 같아가지고 이분하고 접근 그게 다 이용할 수 있어야 되는 건가 싶어서.
Can you tell us a little bit more about how can you use integration here?
이쪽에 소리가 이공계수 정의에다가 저 주어진 식 해가지고 그 다음에 뭐 적분을 했던가 그랬던 것 같아가지고 미분이랑 적분을 다 알아야 할 수 있던 문제가 없어서 2번은 했습니다.
Okay. What about the 신재훈?
선생님 잘못 골랐습니다.
네. What about 이시연? Yeah. Why don't you tell us your opinion about that?
저는 저 문제를 풀 때 함수의 기울기 풀어내는 걸 생각을 해서 이걸 물어봤습니다.
What do you think about? Do you understand what C means, right? It can be connected to what? Average rate of change. And then let me see. 이희주? What do you think about number 2 opinion? The average rate of change, and then she or he thought about category 2. What about others' opinion? Please tell us your opinion about the issue. Anyway, this is obviously most of you selected number 1. As you can see, group 1 selected 1. Let me move to maybe this problem to discuss more effectively. What about this one? This problem from group 5. Why don't you select this time your opinion? Is it same or is it different? Anyway, so I'm going to see your opinion about this one. Let's start once again. Oh, this time selection 2 increased. We still have number 3. 이주영? Why did you select number 1?
그냥 아까 문제랑 비슷한 형태의 문제고 단순히 G0 구한 다음에 미분 계수 정의에 대입해서 푼 문제여서 뭔가 어떠한 다른 분야를 연결시켜서 전체를 산출한 것 같지도 않고 그다음에 뭐 실생활에 적용하는 문제도 아닌 것 같아서 그래서 1번 나왔다.
Okay. What about the 정식? 정식이 number 2. 정식한테 여쭤보세요.
지금 그러니까 2번을 선택하긴 했는데 긴가민가한 것 같은데 2번을 선택한 이유에 대해서 만약에 설명을 하라고 말씀하시면은 그러니까 이 문제가 단순히 미분에 관한 문제뿐만이 아니라 함수에 대한 기본적인 아이디어를 알고 있어야 되기 때문에 그 함수하고 이제 미분이라는 그 수학적 아이디어 자체를 먼저 이해를 해야 되는 게 먼저고 그거를 통해서 바로 f'x라는 이제 미분계수 자체를 바로 구할 거기 때문에 그 주어진 조건을 이용해서 문제를 풀어야 되니까 함수하고 미분 그 사이의 관계를 이해하고 이제 구해야 된다고 생각해서 2번 선택하긴 했는데 사실은 아직 잘 1번인지 2번인지 훨씬 잘 감이 오진 않아요.
So in that case, what about coherent whole from your perspective? Like when I provide example, right, the area and volume, student basically understand their equivalent concept, right? That is coherent whole. After looking at the area, volume, probably at first the student think separately. Oh, this is area, this is volume. But by providing those kind of example, I'm going to explain. I can explain student their equivalent idea. Basically, just this is the case of area. This is the case of volume. That's the only difference. That's why that idea which I introduced in class produce a coherent whole. That's why I emphasize. What about the coherent whole in this case? It should include a coherent whole if this problem categorized as second statement. Something coherent whole mean a big idea, right? Produce something after connecting each other. That's why I emphasize coherent whole. Any other opinion? What about Wang Jian? Okay, that's okay. So if you made a mistake, it does not matter. So what about Kim Kyun? Yeah. Michael.
아까 말씀해주신 상황이랑 비슷한 의견인데 단순히 첫 번째 문제는 아까 교수님 보여주신 문제는 단순히 미분에 관한 문제라고 하면은 이번 문제는 미분에 관한 내용뿐만 아니라 전반적으로 함수는 어떻게 함수의 정의와 성질까지 다 전반적으로 다 알아야지만 풀 수 있는 문제라고 생각을 해요.
Right. Here is one important thing you should realize by using these two problems. The second category, you should focus on produce a coherent whole, which means not just connecting mathematical idea. That can be just in the first statement, okay? Because connection between mathematical idea, right? Obviously, as you can see, the first statement, as you can recognize, use connection among mathematical idea, right? So do you understand what is the use connection, right? Because this is function, but basic concept you can use, right? To solve differential problem, right? But if possibly there's no producing a coherent whole, right? That's going to be number one category, right? But if there is idea of producing a coherent whole, that's going to be the second category. Make sense to you? But it's still depending on how to approach the problem. But if you're going to think in depth, the problem, you can see. Make sense to you? The first category and second category? Any question regarding? Not just implication, okay? Producing a coherent whole mean not just implication. Oh, still may think in this way, not just from your implication, exactly from the problem solving, okay? You may explicitly ask the question, what is the relationship between function and whole blah blah blah. Okay, then they can think, how to produce a coherent whole between two ideas. Not implicitly, right? But explicitly, mathematical problem should be asked, and student can produce a coherent whole from the problem solving. Any question regarding this? Make sense to you the differences between the first statement and second statement now? Much more clear? Any question? Anyway, so let's hear group 5. Who is group 5, by the way? Raise your group 5. Let's see. 윤종현, 남상훈, 송강일, 윤예린, 신일수. So, anyone from the group 5, what do you think now after discussing this issue? Anyone, group 5? You can address your opinion. I just want to hear, opinion from group 5 because group 5 selected number 2. Anyone?
저희가 생각했을 때
네.
이제 이 문제하고 다른 문제 하나를 더해서 그 두 개가 이제 공통된 일관된 전체를 다른 접근 방식을 사용해서 생각해서 그 중에 하나로 이제 저 문제 자체로만 보면 저도 개인적으로는 1번에 더 가깝다고 생각하는데 저희가 보는 다른 문제도 같이 연관해서 생각하면 이제
What is the other problem? I cannot remember. So what did you select?
그냥 함수 fx에 대해서 단순히 그냥 미분한
아하.
값인데 이제 시그마만 들어가 있는
Okay, right. I can remember. Yeah.
그래서
Can you explain more why those two problem? Okay, basically, group 5 selected two different problem. One problem, do you know the sigma, right? The sum of the several functions, isn't it? Right? The sum of several functions,
네.
right? And then what is the differential value of that function? And then they provide this problem. They provide two problem in the second category. So after providing two problem, so can you explain more?
그래서 두 문제 다 미분 개수를 구하는 게 동일한 목적인데
Yeah.
1번에서는 이제 방금 전에 말씀하신 대로 아예 외적으로 그다음 10의 값을 물어봤던 보고 누가 봐도 솔직히 처음 봤을 때 바로 이건 그냥 미분 바로 이용하면 되겠다는 걸 알 수 있는 문제라고 생각을 했고 그다음에 여기 나오는 이번 문제는 똑같이 미분 개수를 구하는 건 맞는데 이 주어진 식만 보고 이거 단순히 우리가 아는 그 미분법의 공식만을 이용해서 풀 수 있는 문제가 아니구나 다른 방법을 써야겠구나라는 생각을 학생들이 하지 않을까 해서 이 문제를
I understand the point from group 5, but if you take a look at the statement more carefully, the first category, first statement recognize and use connection among mathematical idea. Still, there is connection between mathematical idea, right? However, the second one is understand how mathematical idea interconnect. In other words, there are two different ideas. For instance, if there is function, the other is differential equation, for instance, not differential equation, the concept of differentiation, right? Then, after looking at how mathematical ideas interconnect and what, build on one another for the purpose of producing a coherent whole. In other words, if you are going to consider just connection, for instance, based on the function of concept, or no, just the concept of function, or what about the sum of two functions equal to just a separate functions value, the sum of two separate functions value. Just the basic concept, if you're going to apply those concepts to the problem solving, to the concept of differentiation, that's going to be just the first category. Because from my perspective, there is no coherent whole. In other words, that is just the sub-concept, if you're going to use the sub-concept, and then just the next level of problem was solved by using the first sub-concept, that's going to be just a connection, okay? The first category. However, if you're going to see, at least something has been changed in the pre-concept as well as the concept learned next, they are interconnect each other and they are going to produce a coherent whole, mean student can see both of them in the same way. That's going to be coherent whole from my perspective according to the NCTM standard. That makes sense to you? That's why the second statement can be differentiated from the first statement. That's why NCTM standard provides the example of both area and volume. Basically, after looking at area and volume, what student can see? Basically, base and height. And then sum of the base and one base, one top, bottom and top can be added together and half multiplied, and the height should be multiplied. Those kind of simple rule can be applied, both of them simultaneously to the area and volume. That's why after looking at two different concepts, student can see connection as well as this idea can be applied probably a coherent whole, and they may apply those concepts to another case as well. That makes sense to you? What is the meaning of coherent whole? This one has the power to apply those concepts to similar situation, right? That's why students realize coherent whole by using connection. Right? Make sense to you? For instance, maybe this one is another example. Take a look at the example I provide, the Pascal triangle, right? And the way of approaching, how many? You may never thought about that way, right? Because just n factorial divided by a factorial and b factorial, for instance. This one, right? You can remember, for instance, this one just 3 factorial and 4 factorial and 7 factorial. This formula you just understand, basically by using the probability. But after looking at the Pascal triangle, you may produce some coherent whole idea. And then you may apply this idea to probably similar situation, right? So coherent whole means there is connection as well as produce kind of as a whole to see two different concepts simultaneously as well as a deep connection and produce probably another idea in similar situation. Even though some cases probably between still. But from my perspective, in this case, if I'm going to categorize, this problem can be categorized into the first statement rather than second statement. That's why this problem I can categorize into the first one. Do you understand what is my rationale, right? Any question? I hope you understand better. Let's see another example based on your problem. What about then this one? This is problem group 1. Once again. 아래 그림과 같이 공기등과 두 개의 방구를 붙여 만든 모양의 탱크를 만들려고 한다. 원기둥의 밑변의 반지름의 길이가 r이고 높이가 4r일 때 다음 물음에 답하여라. 탱크의 부피 VR을 r에 관한 식으로 나타내거나 V 프라임 1의 값을 구하여라. This is basically the problem. It looks like a normal distribution, right? It's not good. You're still confusing them. Let's take a look at. So Hayu, can you explain to us why did you select one? I'm just checking, because everyone should be asked, during the class.
그걸 처음에 아마 1조에서 뽑았을 때는 제가 봤을 때 3번에 넣었을 것 같은데요.
네.
네, 아마 교과서에서 뽑았네요.
1조 됐죠. 교과서에서 뽑았냐고 물어보는데요.
네, 교과서에서 나왔습니다.
교과서에서 뽑았다고.
저도 뭐 저희조도 이제 교과서에서 뽑다 보니까 사실 저희도 비슷한 걸 했는데 저게 이제 아마 3번으로 한 거 같나요? 3번은 아니고 저는 1번이라고 생각한 이유는 뭐 부피랑 그런 거를 같이 집어넣었다고는 하지만 그게 그렇게 뭐 수준 높은 문제라고 생각이 들지 않아서 저는 그냥 1번이라 했습니다.
네, 그럼 2번도 안 들어보죠. 엄다영. 다행히 발판했죠. 네, 엄다영. 네, 엄다영.
이거는 그 이유는 단순히 미분을 하는 문제가 아니라 미분이 P나 이런 넓이를 구하는 상황에서 존재하는 거라는 것을 깨닫게 하기 위한 문제가 있는
So in that case, do you think what is the part of producing a coherent code?
미분하고 미분의 넓이를 구하는 그
Okay. What about number 3? 2배?
이게 근데 문제가 탱크를 만들려고 한다고 시작을 하잖아요.
네.
그러니까 그냥 함수로 그동안 다뤄왔던 거를 어떤 걸 만드는 행위랑 그 동기를 엮으려는 의지가 문제에서 명백하게 보이기 때문에 네, 그 다른 수학 외적인 다른 상황에서 그 수학적인 개념을 적용하고 이해할 수 있는 그런 목적을 가지고 만든 문제라고.
So one of the important things under the category of connection, you should carefully understand this part. Outside of mathematics, what is the meaning of that? According to the NCTM standard, if you read carefully their description, anyway, you still can debatable about this issue. But from my perspective, outside of mathematics, that means, so they provide several examples. For instance, mathematics can be applied to science. Mathematics can be applied to social science. Those kind of concepts they provided. That makes sense? So outside of mathematics means the context means just they provide several examples, but this example, science, for instance, social science and physics, something like that. So, but there are two different contexts. One context, like this one, just bring outside context, and they kind of, what is called the artificial situation from my perspective. Okay? Not just the natural situation, this one. So you need to differentiate two of them. Okay? There is obviously differences between artificial situation and what? Natural situation. Even though in the process of modeling, this is going to be connected to representation as well. I'm going to explain later while I'm explaining the representation. But anyway, so there is differences, right, from your perspective as well, right? The differences between what? Artificial situation and natural situation. Natural situation means those concepts, mathematical concepts, actually arise from what? The situation. They are not making artificially those situations. For instance, if you're going to physics, right? There is physics rule, physics, principle, right? Those kind of situation is not made by yourself, right? Physician developed, right? Those kind of situation. Social science as well, right? That's kind of natural situation. That makes sense? So from my perspective, this one outside of mathematics means just a natural situation according to the NCTM standard, not artificial situation. Can you differentiate two of them? I'm just explaining NCTM standard perspective, right? Not just my perspective, okay? Therefore, you need to think about what is the meaning of outside of mathematics. But according to the NCTM standard, they means natural context, not just, artificial context. That's why this is valuable, right? So you need to differentiate artificial context from natural context. That makes sense to you? Therefore, at least, this one is now going to be, from my perspective, the third statement. You understand why I'm selecting, why I provided my rationale enough, right? Why I'm selecting instead of third. That should be first or second. Well, let's take a look at the first or second. What do you think? At least this problem is not the third one, right? Because this is kind of artificial situation from my perspective. But you still debate. Professor, then what is the artificial situation? It's really depending on there is still left over objective perspective, right? So, objective perspective, subjective perspective. Because from your subjective perspective, this is the natural situation from my perspective. Still debatable, but I think most people agree upon this one is a much more natural situation, right? In this situation, mathematics can be used naturally, right? So anyway, that's the kind of a judgment, right? Which one is outside of mathematics? Anyway, so I just want to clarify for your better understanding of outside of mathematics. That makes sense to you? Well, what about the 1 and 2? 오명훈?
네.
Can you explain, from your perspective, what is a coherent whole in this case?
저는 아까 교수님께서 자료를 올려주신 예시 같이 이것도 총 한 3가지 방법 정도 생각할 수 있겠는데, 첫 번째로 중학교 때 배웠던 부피 구하는 공식을 이용해서 부의 부피를 구한 다음에 옮기는 부피를 구하는 방법이 있고, 또 구분부정법 있고, 마지막으로 이 문제에서 원하는 만큼 정적분을 이용해서 푸는 그 3가지가 전부 다 일관할 수 있게 하나의 값을 낸다고 생각해서 2번을 골랐습니다.
Any other opinion about it? Especially, let's hear one more, the number 1. Let's select, let's see. 명주 학생 아까 발표했나요? 김명주 학생 발표했죠. 김명주. 네. Why don't you tell us in your opinion? Why did you select 1 instead of 2? then let's hear the opinion from the first group. Group 1, raise your hand. Yeah, why don't you explain to us? You can clear it to us. Just at the beginning of the stage, you selected this one as the category 2, right? Can you explain to us?
먼저 그 R에 관한 미지수로 그 부피를 구할 수 있는 것과 또 미지수로 나타낸 그 함수식을 미분을 해서 그 변화율을 구할 수 있다는 것을 통해서 저 부피를 R로 표현한 그 함수식을 저희가 미분을 하게 되면은 반지름에 따른 그 탱크의 부피의 변화를 동시에 구할 수 있다고 생각해서 이거는 코헤런트 홀을 그 부피 구하는 공식과 미분을 통해서 반지름이 변하는 것에 따른 부피 변화를 구하는 식을 구할 수 있다는 측면에서 이거는.
Okay, here is the important thing. I understand your perspective, group 1. But my question is, according to these two problems, do you think a student can catch the point you just addressed?
저도 그 측면에서 약간 이 문제 할 때 고민되긴 했는데 왜냐면은 소문제 1번, 2번으로는 그걸 전체 다 알 수 없다고는 생각을 했는데 그래도 이러한 문제들을 자주 접하면서 학생들이 그러한 측면까지 생각을 해볼 수 있어요.
Right, but that still influences, right? That's not problem solving. That's exactly what I want to point out. Okay? So problem solving, always you need to ask explicitly. For instance, you may add one more problem here. Okay? What is the meaning of differentiation in this case? Or what is the relationship between differentiation and rate of change? Right? That's much more explicitly, right? Clarify what is the main idea. Do you understand my point? So in other words, you need to clarify by using problem solving, explicitly ask if you want some connection, especially, right? You cannot imply student might develop this kind of connection after solving this one. That's a very dangerous approach from my perspective, okay? Because student may see that connection, but others may not see. That's going to be problematic, right? Because if you want all of your students to develop those kind of connection, you need to specifically and explicitly ask that kind of question. That's my point, okay? So from my perspective, according to only these two problems, I assume you addressed your perspective exactly. But I hope that kind of perspective can be learned by students. But still, I'm still asking only by using these two questions, students can learn that kind of perspective. It may not. Okay? Do you understand my point, right? You need to think about that issue. Therefore, in terms of developing assessment item, you need to carefully think about what about this problem evaluate? What kind of thing this problem evaluating? Right? Is it really producing coherent whole or just connection mathematical idea? That's why I'm asking this question. I hope I answered to your question enough. Anyway, so you need to think about, okay? Any question regarding this problem? 서로? Make sense to you? What about this one? Group 2. Let's take a look at problem first. Basically, 실수 xy에 대하여 행렬 a는 x-2, -y, y-2, x 플러스 2의 역행렬이 존재하지 않을 때 좌표 평면 위에 점 xy가 나타내는 그래프의 개형은 그리고 나서 graph representation was provided. 소혜윤 아까 발표했어요?
예.
아, 발표했네요. 이주영 발표했습니까?
네.
다음에 이성룡?
네.
성룡이 발표했어요?
안 했습니다.
네, 성룡이 안 발표했어요. 네, 발표 안 했죠. 성룡이.
아까 문제 같은 경우에는
네.
행렬식을 풀어서 하나의 그 이원 방정식이 나와서 그 그래프를 어떤 걸 표현하는지 알아야 되잖아요. 그런데 보통은 그래프가 저렇게 표현된다고 하면은 뭐뭐뭐는 0 이런 식으로 어떤 등식꼴로 나타난다고 생각하는데 저렇게 행렬로 어떤 미지수를 넣어서 조건을 주면은 저와 같은 그래프를 다른 식으로도 표현할 수 있구나라는 다른 방식의 접근을 통해서 좀 더 다양한 그 표현이 가능하다는 큰 그림을 그릴 수 있다고 생각해서 저는 2번을 택했습니다.
So what is the exactly coherent whole? Can you explain to us once again? So what is the coherent whole?
어떤 관계식을 표현할 때 한 가지 방법만 있는 게 아니라 여러 방법이 있다. 그런 식의 접근을 통해서 표현의 어떤 표현이라는 어떤 그게 바로 코herent 표현 방식.
What about the 연수 안 했죠? 김명수.
전 2조 학생인데
2조가 이걸 뭘 했죠?
1번 했습니다.
1번 했네요.
이 문제 같은 경우에는 2차 정사각행렬의 역행렬을 구할 조건이랑 그 원의 방정식을 이용해서 주어진 xy의 점의 자치를 그래프로 그리는 문제인데요. 저희도 1번이랑 2번을 고민을 했는데
예.
저희가 2번에서 생각한 코헤런트 홀을 어떻게 생각했냐면 이게 코헤런트 홀이
1번으로 답한 거 아니었어요?
예, 근데 2번이랑 1번을 고민을 했는데
아, 예.
2번이 아닌 이유를
아, 예.
설명 중이에요. 저희가 생각한 코헤런트 홀이 그게 처음에 이 문제에 대한 결론을 이용해서 다른 상황에 적용할 수 있는 일반화냐 아니면은 그 저희가 수학 교과 과정에서 그 나선형 교육과 과정이라 하잖아요.
네.
그 전체적인 틀 속에서 기존의 내용을 이렇게 통합하면서 확장시켜 나가는 거냐 그거를 그 둘 중에 뭐냐고 생각하다가 둘 다 맞는 것 같다. 그걸 두 개 다 포함해야 된다. 그러니까 결국에는 저희 이 문제에서 평가 도구로서 애들한테 코헤런트 홀을 알아내려면은 그 문제에서 나오는 여러 가지 개념을 통해서 그 개념을 묶는 더 큰 그 이해적 틀이라고 해야 되네요. 좀 더 큰 직관 같은 그거를 보기 위해서는 좀 더 문제에서 대놓고 물어봐야 된다고 생각을 해서 요거 같은 경우에는 좀 변수가 x 뭐 이런 게 아니고 x-2가 들어 그 좀 더 큰 관점에서 보기가 조금 모호하다고 생각을 했습니다. 뭐 똑똑한 학생 같은 경우는 행렬의 원소들을 역행렬을 가질 조건을 이용해서 그래프를 그릴 수 있겠구나 하면서 막 머릿속에 그림을 그릴 수도 있겠지만 그 평가 도구로서 그 코헤런트 홀을 물어보려면 좀 더 대놓고 물어봐야 되지 않을까 해서 2번을
Yeah, similarly, yeah, I agree with you. Similarly, the same issue, as I said, I'm asking by using only this problem, do you think student can produce a coherent whole, right? That's going to be basically the question we need to think about. So, what kind of coherent whole can student develop by solving this kind of problem? So that's why basically in this problem, at least I agree with the group two's opinion. Okay, even though some of you may think this can be categorized too. But as I said, one of the important things, whether the result is right or wrong is not important issue right now in some aspect. That's why I didn't deduct any points if your point is different from mine. But if you do not address the point which I asked in the homework, I deducted some point. But even if you are going to have different opinion about the same problem, it does not matter, because after looking at problems differently and diversely, I think your thinking process is going to be different. Okay, that is the main purpose. Maybe if you're going to study, right? So to be a teacher, the NCTM standard, you are going to decide at that time. But at least in this class, so by using this kind of discussion, I really hope your thinking process kind of different by using this kind of discussion. Okay? Oh, it's not that simple. You need to think about differently, and you need to hear in others' opinion. Oh, this problem can be thought differently as well. Anyway, that is the main purpose. That's why. But from time to time, many of you just ask me, so what is your opinion? So, Professor, what is your opinion about this problem? That's why I'm answering. But my answer is not important issue, because I'm just telling you my rationale why I selected that problem as the category first or second or third. Okay, so don't be intimidated, okay, by the answer I provide. Okay, you need to think by yourself. Okay, oh, that makes sense. Then you need to accept those kind of perspective. If you not still accept my opinion, you can develop your own justification more precisely. Okay, I think this way. That is the part of math education process. Okay. Anyway, but you need to develop consistency as well. Do you understand why I selected the first category? I cannot see clearly. My answer is this. I cannot see clearly by solving this problem what kind of coherent tool student may develop. I have no answer about that. Okay? That's why I selected number 1. Obviously, this is not number 3, right? The third category. That's why if I'm going to select this one as a category, I'm going to select the first one, because I cannot see clearly what is the coherent tool by solving this problem. That's why by using problem solving, you need to explicitly ask the question. That's really important. In order to develop any assessment item, you need to explicitly ask the question. If you want some aspect in that problem solving. Anyway, let's do one more problem. What about this one? And then I'm going to finish. It looks complicated, but it's not almost similar. Anyway, this is group 2 problem, by the way. 점 P가 가로의 길이 1, 세로의 길이가 2인 직사각형 내부에서 움직이고 있다. 이름과 같이 점 P와 각꼭 지점 연결하였을 때 생기는 내 삼각형 넓이를 ABCD라 하자. 행렬 ABCD의 역행렬이 존재하지 않도록 하는 점 P의 자취의 길이는. What do you think about this one? I hope you better understand connection now. So as you can see, even though most of item, most of problem can be categorized as the first one, but the second one, third one is not that easy in terms of developing assessment item. As you can see, I explained it enough. That's why most of it selected 2 on 1. Okay. Let me share just one opinion. 혜정이, why did you select 2? And then I'm going to finish.
그 문제가 이제 P가 생각하기에는 행렬의 역행렬을 말하는 건데
네.
사실은 말하고 싶은 거는 거기에 비율이 같아야 된다는 걸 말하는 것 같아요. 굉장히 없는 걸 말하는데 규율 같은 걸 말하고 그리고 그거는 이제 제가 알기로 저게 답이 대각선으로 나오던데
예.
그래가지고 뭐 역행렬이 존재하지 않는다고 말하지만 실제로는 어떤 직선으로 해서 규율이 똑같은 걸 말하고 싶은 것 같아서 결국 뭐 되게 표현한 속을 이거 같아가지고 비율이 같다는 그 말을 저런 식으로 표현하고 다른 식으로 표현하는
That's a good point. But I'm still asking. By problem solving, by only problem, if you're going to ask one more question, next question, for instance, what is the relationship or what kind of relationship between the inverse matrix, the what is it, and then the geometric meaning? If you're going to ask those kind of questions, that makes sense, from your perspective, from my perspective, right? So I think if students realize those kind of perspective, you need to ask one more question, not just this problem question. That makes sense? Then probably student may see the relationship.
어떤 한 문제가 좀 더 학생들 이야기
Yes. You need to explicitly ask if you want your student, right, to see those kind of relations. Otherwise, they may not see. Maybe some of them see, but others may not see. That's going to be problematic, okay, in terms of developing assessment manual. You need to explicitly clarify what kind of connection or what kind of coherent tool you want to address by using this problem. Make sense to you? Okay, that's all for today. See you on Thursday. I'm going to explain.